So today we're going to be talking about the basics of what's called linear perspective. Now, what perspective does is it makes things appear to come towards us or to recede in space. There are a couple of different kinds, and while it may sound foreign when we first talk about it, after a little bit of familiarity, after gaining familiarity and getting to know these concepts, it will become like second nature. And we go through the exercises in order to let go of the exercises, because once you understand how perspective works, then you no longer need to use the ruler and the vanishing points on the page. You can just guess and look at your object, and you'll be able to get believable perspective. So what we're looking at here is what we call one-point linear perspective. Creating a room in one-point perspective will be one of your homework assignments. So let's look at this one a little bit further. So this is one-point perspective in its simplest form. In order to understand this, you need to also understand what we call the horizon line. A horizon line is quite simply your eye level. One way that I like to consider it in any reference is I say, where is the person holding the camera standing? Are they at, say, the knee level, like the level of the knees of the figure? Are they up on a ladder looking down on the subject? Like that. So whatever that view is, that will become the horizon line. And here, it's right here, and there's one point on the horizon line, and all of the lines lead to that one point. That's really it. It's quite simple. And here's another example of a room drawn in one-point linear perspective. So to do this, all you need to do is to start with a horizon line, vanishing point, and then to go from there. Okay, now let's look at something called two-point linear perspective. Now this is how we can create boxes and such. There's a great tutorial posted in the module that will show you how to do it. What I generally do is number 1, draw the horizon line. Number 2, choose a couple of vanishing points. This can be random, especially for this exercise. And then I will put in one vertical line on my box and connect to the vanishing point. Okay, and then from the bottom of that vertical line, I will connect again. Now that line can be as long as you want it to be. It could be a short box or a tall box. It will just look different no matter how you do that. Okay, whoops, back here. Okay, so here's a way to draw a house using the same perspective. Let's take this a little bit more, get a little bit more complicated with it. Oh, well, this looks like fun. With the basic understanding of how to draw a box, you can draw a town. Now, let's consider where the horizon line is here. Where is the camera? Would you say that it's at the level of the door? No, I think it's above the door. Notice how here all these lines go down, and here they go kind of up. I think it's right about here. One of the interesting things about the horizon line is okay, so these, let's see if I can explain this. These lines angle upward. These lines angle downward. But the lines that are right on the horizon line, they're flat. So if you were looking at, say, siding on a house that you were looking at in perspective, some of it appears to angle down or up, but the flat part, that would be your horizon line. I invite you to return to the most simple idea that it's wherever the eye level of the viewer or the camera is, that would be the horizon line. If you don't understand it for this exercise, just choose a line, be arbitrary. Draw a line on the page and start from there. Now let's look at one more way we can use this. This is like the fence posts that disappear into the distance. So this is an interesting exercise. I want you also to do this kind of a disappearing exercise where notice that where the graph paper is, that very principle of it'll angle up the lines angle up towards the vanishing point, but then on the horizon line, they're flat right here. You see? So what we do here is this artist has made a series of lines and then let the tops of the bottles follow them. Why don't we look at one more example where that's taken to a different extreme? Isn't that beautiful? It's the same basic principle that we saw in the bottles. So we'll just look at a few more examples, and then I'll let you go on and try one of your own. So here we have a tree house, and it is done on the left in 1-point perspective and on the right in 2-point perspective. Okay, so let's kind of take a look at where the horizon line might be, and I think the artist has drawn it right here. Whoops, move the whole thing. Okay, so you can just let your imagination go. If it feels confusing, then just persevere and return to the very simple exercises of 1 point, drawing the train tracks or the road disappearing into the distance, where you could draw a room. And then the second one would be the 2-point, where you draw the box. Here's another example, 2-point and 1-point. Now, how does it work in a face? It really works the same way. A lot of times we'll figure it out in a face by using our eyes, by observation, rather than by measuring it. When I'm drawing a portrait, if I measure it too much, I get into a different part of my head, and it's much harder to draw. The more logical side, you might say. But you can keep in your mind that these rules of perspectives still apply. So here's a fun exercise with 1 point. You see how all of the lines go to that same point. You might want to duplicate this one for your homework. So we'll just look at 2 more, and this is how this would be applied. This principle would be applied in a painting. Here's a very famous painting by Vincent van Gogh. It's actually the bed that he died in. But even though if we took these lines away, it would look sort of chaotic and like it didn't make sense. This is all done in immaculate perspective. Okay? One more is what we call atmospheric perspective. It's sort of painted in the same style. Notice how the road and the landscape that's closest to us is quite bright, but as it goes off into the distance, it becomes closer and closer to the color of the sky. You might also notice that we have what we call a bird's eye view, so we're looking down on this scene. All right, well, this concludes the introduction to this idea of perspective. Some people really take to it. It's your nature, maybe, to love the logic and the mathematics of it. Other people find it confusing, and perspective doesn't really align with their idea of making art. Whichever side of this spectrum you're on, I encourage you to learn these skills because they will help your drawing immensely no matter what. All right, thanks for listening.